If you hadn't noticed yet, I absolutely love this game. I theorized on it once, then I theorized on it again, then I reviewed it with a phenomenal score. Almost all of my videos use this game's soundtrack in the background, and it was the first real role-playing game I ever played. Yeah, I'm not exactly the gaming type. See my second channel for more on that. It's Shawshank! But this game has one big, unanswered question that has puzzled everybody who's ever played it. At the end of the game, what happens to Darkrai? If you haven't played this game and you're just here because you think my videos are interesting, I'd recommend you first watch my other theory, which you can do by clicking on that little white box in the top right corner now. That video recaps the entire story of the game, and you should watch that video before this one. Okay, we are ready to answer the ultimate question, Darkrai's fate. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and this theory of mine is just going to list off all of the possibilities for Darkrai's death. No one true answer really exists, but we can narrow it down using logic and evidence. So at the very end of the game, Darkrai reveals that he's behind everything, and then you fight him. When you defeat him, he opens a portal through the 4th dimension and hops inside. Suddenly, Palkia appears and smashes the portal to bits. This erases Darkrai's memory and throws him at some random point throughout time. Quite fitting, since that's exactly what Darkrai did to you. But the big question is, was Darkrai altered by this explosion? Did he turn into a different Pokémon like how you were turned from a human? Let's think. After you defeat him, Darkrai can be recruited through certain dungeons. However, despite what the wiki states, we know that this isn't actually the same Darkrai. Just like the other bosses and main characters, you can find the same Pokémon all throughout the dungeons, but it is not the same character. So what is the true fate of this cunning villain? As I said, it's entirely possible for Darkrai to have become a different Pokémon altogether, or perhaps even a human. Sort of like an inverse effect. If a dimensional portal snaps on a Pokémon, instead of making the human a Pokémon, it makes the Pokémon a human. It would be poetic justice, since it was Darkrai who was responsible for you, the human, turning into a Pokémon. That would flip the game on its head. But here's a really shocking question. When you first wake up on the beach, you are stunned that Pokémon can talk. You're in a world full of Pokémon, not humans, and since you were a human, you couldn't communicate with Pokémon before. But when we do travel to the future, we see that there are no humans there, just tons more of Pokémon. Why were you the only human in a Pokémon-only future? Grovyle never even touches upon it, and your memory is wiped, so the answer is never revealed. Grovyle likely never knew nor questioned it, but the most likely explanation is that you just appeared there, without any memory, like the other games. So are you Darkrai? During Darkrai's attack on you and Grovyle, you jumped out in front of Grovyle. The blast from this attack, mixed with the fact that you were time-traveling, caused you to turn into a Pokémon, land on a beach several years ago, and lose all of your memories. Comparatively, when Palkia attacked Darkrai's dimensional hole, Darkrai was slammed with the blast just like you were. We know for a fact that this would erase his memories, and we know for a fact that it would send him throughout some timeline. And we know that there's a 50-50 chance of him being transformed into someone or something else. It would shock me if the creators had intended for your character to be Darkrai, though it does make some of the most logical sense when you consider how, as far as we know, you were the only human in the future. Or how about the fact that you somehow just randomly have the powers of a dimensional scream? That makes virtually no sense, but when you look at Darkrai's power, his natural Pokemon abilities allow pretty much the same things. He constantly opens space-time portals and sees the future and past. And an even bigger mind blow is that Darkrai is most likely from the future in the first place. He says he had to attack you and Grovyle when you went back in time, because he didn't want you interfering. Yet, if he knew this, then that can only mean that he too was from the future. So hold on. Darkrai is hell-bent on ruling an evil future, so he corrupts everybody and controls Dialga for years. When he learns of Celebi sending Grovyle and you to the past, he attacks you and turns you into a Pokémon. However, he realizes that Grovyle, in the end, is successful in changing the future into a peaceful place, as we see in Special Episode 5. So Darkrai goes back in time, corrupts Palkia instead, and poses as his arch-nemesis Cresselia. Darkrai is eventually defeated, so he jumps through his space-time portal using his mystical powers of dark, nightmarish space-time manipulation. Palkia attacks the portal, fracturing Darkrai's memory and converting him into a different species, just like the dimensional shattering always allows you to do. As we see in the little intro quiz thing, you can choose to be any Pokemon you like. Darkrai's fate is considerably different. He is turned into a human, so that he may not speak to a single Pokemon. This would not only prevent him from figuring out anything about his past, but it would strip him of almost all of his evil moves, except his ability to do with space-time portal jumping. Instead, he is stripped down to just visions of past events. Now here's where things get tricky. You see, there are two separate timelines in this game. The one where things are a dystopia and the one where things are a utopia. Because of Arceus, both now coexist as parallel universes. Darkrai's fate is a rather intensely brutal punishment, being left with no memory in the darkened future that he created. So he learns his way, finds a Pokemon friend known as Grovyle, and they learn of a way to save the future. They consult Celebi and travel back in time to prevent Dialga's insanity. This is when Darkrai initially corrupts them, causing our first Darkrai to lose his memory again and get turned into a different Pokemon. Yet again. Also, notice how the only character who, for some reason, tends to shapeshift forms in time travel is Darkrai, and your character. The only way for a shapeshift to happen in a bizarre attack during time traveling is because of the effects of an attack from the spatial Pokemon, Palkia. You being attacked by Darkrai during time travel was no reason for you turning into a Pokemon. You did it because Palkia's spatial alteration is in your system. Because you are Darkrai. Anyways, after you land on the beach, Darkrai number 2, who attacked you, Darkrai number 1, he travels back in time after he fails at creating a dark future. Meanwhile, Darkrai number 1, you, has just saved the world. But that doesn't stop Darkrai number 2. After being chased by his nemesis, who is also likely from the future, he disguises as her and tries to kill you many times. At this point in the timeline, Darkrai number 2 does not know the true identity of you. He knows you were a human, but he doesn't truly know that you're him. So killing is his motive. And at this point in the timeline, 2 separate Darkrais have been created anyways, so killing the original wouldn't destroy the new one. So he tries killing. When he fails, he invites Darkrai number 1, you, to his hideout at Dark Crater. And then something really interesting happens. Darkrai number 2 has finally figured out that you, Darkrai number 1, are the same person as him. So he tries to persuade you into ruling the future with him. This confused me so much when I played the game, because first of all, wouldn't he also try to persuade the partner? And second of all, I thought Darkrai was a one-person team, that he took over everything by himself. He's not a sharing person. So it confused me that he'd let you and nobody else join him. Even his wording implies his knowledge. He doesn't want to kill you, because he is you. Although, as I said, the parallel universes don't matter at this point since there are 2 Darkrais. Darkrai number 2 has figured it out, because he realizes that your Dimensional Scream ability is just a watered-down version of his space-time powers. After you inevitably defeat Darkrai, he escapes, only for Palkia to see a fitting punishment, having him wander his own dark future, clueless and blank. It's also the exact kind of thing Palkia would do. And that would be the true, underlying conspiracy of it all. The mysterious terror of this game and its phenomenal lore. A conspiracy which only Palkia and Arceus know at this point in time. But it doesn't end badly. Once you defeat the true biggest enemy of the game, yourself, you finally get to relax and have a normal life. And that's all extremely symbolic. You have always wondered about your past, the confusions that tormented you, and now you have caught up and defeated it. The most fitting conclusion to to the game. Now the only question is what exactly Cresselia is doing chasing after Darkrai. She wants to apprehend him for his intentions of a darkened future, but if she too is from the future, was she working with you in Grovyle? She seems to already know a ton about you despite us just meeting her. Cresselia is the original savior of the future. But clearly she sucks because of how many times she dies in Dark Crater. Like, good god, you pathetic Pokemon. Using up all my Reviver seeds. What the hell's wrong with you? Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.